Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I'm going to be telling you about all the best stuff Prime Video is adding in July 2021. So it has been a long time since I've done one of these videos for Prime Video. I do one for Netflix every single month, but Prime Video dumps a lot of stuff on the first and then not much else through the rest of the month. July is no exception, other than the fact that they're releasing a huge movie, The Tomorrow War. We're going to talk a little bit about that, as well as a lot of stuff that they do release on July 1st. As usual, the full list of all the movies and shows listed in this video is in the top pinned comment below. You can go down there, take a screen grab with your phone, and then you've got it with you for the rest of the month. But let's go ahead and get started with everything Prime Video is adding on July 1st. It's hard to believe 30 Days of Night is almost 15 years old already. This movie came out at a time when Twilight was at its peak and all the hard edges on vampires had been rounded off and they were no longer threatening. This movie kind of reclaimed the scary vampire movie. I love it. It's bloody, it's gory, and it does not forget to be fun. I feel like Across the Universe is one of the better musicals, or at least one that I enjoyed the most over the last, I don't know, quarter century. But I would imagine anybody who is a Beatles fan in any fashion has seen this at least once. If you have not, if it somehow escapes your radar, this is an amazing musical featuring all the hits from the Beatles, and it's incredibly stunning from a visual perspective. A lot of practical effects, sets, costumes, really interesting stuff that takes this movie beyond your typical musical. Alien, one of the most classic sci-fi horror movies of all time, if not the most classic sci-fi horror movies of all time. It is a classic for a reason. Not only does it hold up, it has been remastered over and over and over again. It looks stunning, it sounds fantastic, and even though it takes 45 minutes, almost half the movie, before anything really dramatic happens, this movie still manages to work. The creep factor works. It doesn't matter how many times you've seen it. The jump scares still manage to work because they're done right. Just a true classic that I watch maybe once a year. Maybe not quite that often, but pretty damn close. Awakenings is a really beautiful movie starring Robert De Niro and Robin Williams. In this movie, Robert De Niro plays a man who is catatonic, and a new drug begins to sort of wake him up. Like I said, very beautifully done. It's from 1990. The age shows on it, but if you like this kind of stuff, this movie is excellent. Another one that is going to pull at your heartstrings is Big Fish, because this is one of Tim Burton's more beloved movies to have come out since, I don't know, the 2000s. Not only is it fun and interesting to watch, it's got a lot of heart at its core. If you've never seen this, it really is a fantastic movie. It is a top-notch Darren Van Dam pick. Don't pass it up. They're also adding Crimson Tide, which is just one of the better submarine movies ever made, particularly one, I guess you could call it modern warfare. I mean, this came out in 1995, but it still basically is the way submarines operate today, more or less. But I would put Crimson Tide up there with Das Boot. Hellboy, the original from 2004, has always been a favorite of mine. I'm a big fan of Guillermo del Toro, and this movie is no exception. Practical effects with all the monsters at a time when that wasn't really done in movies. Movies like this were heavy CGI, and there is quite a bit in Hellboy, but Del Toro knew to make these monsters with practical effects, and the movie holds up and works today as a result. On that note, also from 2004 is I, Robot. This is one that was a decent movie with Will Smith, but it did come out at a time where he was kind of at the top of his game, and this movie was a little disappointing. That said, in retrospect, looking at it, it is a fun sci-fi movie. However, it's the opposite of what I said about Hellboy. Everything is CGI in this movie, and the movie I think is less impactful because of it, but it is a fun, sort of wild sci-fi ride that is not going to be too intense for older kids. It is PG-13, but it's a lot of robots getting shredded up and not a lot of blood and guts. Midnight in Paris is one of the last great movies that Woody Allen directed. This stars Owen Wilson as a man who's on vacation in Paris and begins to take these night walks where he starts to interact with classic figures from history, people like Ernest Hemingway, Josephine Baker, Zelda and Scott Fitzgerald, and it's just really well written, a lot of fantastic interactions, not just with those historical characters, but some of the other characters in the movie. Really great stuff if you've never seen it. Money Train is a pretty fun action movie from 1995 starring Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes. It does show its age quite a bit, but if you're into that, if you like the 90s vibe, this is a fun watch, just not really a great one. Like I said, it does not really hold up. For something much older, On the Waterfront from 1954 is one of the most classic movies ever made. If you've never seen it, now would be a great time to watch it. You notice on this channel I do not recommend older movies very often. It's because they don't put classics like this on streaming services very often, but there are a few more coming to Prime Video this month, including a couple from Alfred Hitchcock. And then Only Lovers Left Alive is a Darren Van Dam pick. This is a Jim Jarmusch movie, and his work is not for everybody, but this is one of his more accessible movies. This is about a couple of vampires played by Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton. John Hurt has a great role. Anton Yelchin was in this right before he died. Jeffrey Wright. It's just got a fantastic supporting cast, some really great interactions and dialogue. Not too much of a plot. It does meander, but this world with these vampires, especially played by these people, is a really fantastic place to spend an hour and a half. I highly recommend it. Open Season is a great one for the kids, but it does jump around. It was just on Netflix, now it's here. That's the case with a lot of these movies, so it's barely worth mentioning, but I thought I'd at least throw it in the mix. For another classic, they're adding Patton. Not my favorite movie as a whole. It's extremely long and it does get lost in the weeds, or at least I do watching it, but the opening monologue with George C. Scott is one of the most classic in movie history. Everybody needs to see it. Most people, if you consider yourself a movie buff, need to watch the entire movie because it's filled with some amazing scenes. And again, just an incredible performance by George C. Scott. I don't think you can call yourself a movie buff if you've never seen Patton, so if you have not yet, maybe you're one of my younger viewers, try to get on it during the month of July. It could make for a great July 4th weekend watch. Phone Booth from 2003 really broke out Colin Farrell as a major star, and I have always liked this movie. Is it a great movie? No, absolutely not. It's not even particularly a good movie, but I really like the setup. I like his performance. It does work considering it all takes place in this phone booth. It's a little zany, a little wacky, doesn't quite make sense, but still it's a fun ride, and I have enjoyed it several times over the years. They're also adding Rear Window, another top-tier Darren Van Dam pick. This is an excellent movie. If you watched The Woman in the Window on Netflix last month and liked it, I can tell you that Rear Window is a much similar concept done over 60 years ago and done way, way better. And that is not a knock against that movie. That is just praise for how brilliant Alfred Hitchcock is, and he really is. When you watch this movie, you need to be fully aware that this is done on a sound stage, that every single person you see walking by the street, every single little interaction in every single window is all meticulously planned out and is part of the story. Most of it, if not all of it, serves and supports the story. It just really is filmmaking at its best, especially if you're paying attention closely, and it's a fantastic thriller as well. It's hard to beat. A lot of people have tried to do it over the years. I don't think anybody has been successful yet. Another top tier Darren Van Dam pick is Guy Ritchie's Snatch. It's coming back to Prime Video. It's one of my favorites of his. It has held up over time. It still looks like a new movie. Incredible cast. Fantastic, fantastic dialogue. When you can understand it, I watched enough of these movies to be able to just understand what they're saying fluently, not just the accents, but the slang as well. So if you're not quite there, you may need to watch a movie like this with subtitles on, but it's just a hell of a fun watch and an all-around good, solid movie. They're also adding David Fincher's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I do think is underrated. I know a lot of people compare these to the original trilogy of the movies, and it's done in a very different way, and I honestly did not really like this version very much when I first saw it in the theater, but it has grown on me over time. It's incredibly creepy. It does get under your skin if you let it. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to resist the temptation to make comparisons. It's incredibly dark. There is sexual assault, so steer clear of it if that's gonna be too intense for you, because this movie is incredibly intense. But I find if you watch it as a standalone and don't make those comparisons, it is pretty excellent, but it is still far from David Fincher's best. The International is a pretty good action movie starring Clive Owen and Naomi Watts. It's one that I was highly anticipating when it came out, and it let me down a little bit, but it's got kind of a Bond thing going on. It's just a little bit dry, but that kind of goes with the territory with espionage movies sometimes. So if you like those types of movies, this is a fun one, especially if you have moderate expectations for it. Forest Whitaker won an Academy Award for his role in The Last King of Scotland. I have not seen this available on streaming services in quite some time, so if you haven't seen it in quite a while, now would be a good time to catch it. It is a dry-ish political drama, but still, fantastic performance from him and from a young James McAvoy as well. They're also adding The Mask of Zorro, the Antonio Banderas version, just a fun, wild action movie from the late 90s. It does show its age, yet it has held up as well. This was beautifully shot. It's this epic sweeping thing. It is PG-13, so it could make a decent family watch this month. And then also from Alfred Hitchcock, they're adding Vertigo, which is one of his more famous, sort of more well-respected within the film community movies. However, it's one of my least favorite of his. I find it to be a little bit dry, and I don't quite get the ending. I mean, I know what happens, but I don't quite get why it's so special compared to some of his other works. However, apparently some people just think that this is one of the greatest movies ever made. I've never quite connected the dots on that one, but it is an exceptional thriller, and it is much better than a lot of things made today because, again, this is Alfred Hitchcock at the top of his game, just not my favorite. And then I hate to follow up that with Your Highness, which was just on Netflix, and it's just a silly stoner comedy that takes place in a medieval fantasy world, but it is a funny movie, and if you didn't catch on by now, I did all of these in alphabetical order just to keep them somewhat organized because we were all over the place genre-wise. Now, let's move on with the rest of the month, focusing on The Tomorrow War, which comes out July 2nd. This is an Amazon original movie that they appear to be fairly proud of. They've been promoting it for quite a while. In this movie, Chris Pratt plays a family man who is sucked into a war of the future. What's interesting about this movie is that people from the future come to modern day and start recruiting and drafting a significant portion of humanity to fight some epic war way in the future. It looks really interesting. I would normally be excited for it, but my expectations are tempered because I'm not quite sure why this is coming out as an Amazon original movie. This totally looks like something that could come out in theaters because Amazon does produce a lot of movies that come out in theaters, usually more indie movies, smaller things, even with big name actors, but not typically big budget spectacles like this. This is also from the director of Lego Batman, which I thought was brilliant. It was funny, the action was great, it was just a really fun, well-directed watch, and Chris Pratt is essentially the modern-day equivalent of Harrison Ford. I'm not comparing him to Harrison Ford, but given the types of franchises that he is in, star power-wise, he's in a similar boat as to what Harrison Ford was in the 80s. So either this really is a good sci-fi movie that's incredibly epic that maybe should have come out in theaters that they scheduled for this release date, not realizing that theaters might be opening back up. I don't know what happened. But don't expect too much, and this could be a good watch. I'll be reviewing it at some point, but those are my thoughts and apprehensions around The Tomorrow War. On July 5th, they add Surf's Up, which is a really fun animated movie for the family. It's about penguins who surf. The beginning of it's kind of shot like a documentary style, and it is really fun to watch as an adult. It's got good humor in it and everything that you would expect from like a Pixar movie, and some pretty fun music, tunes from Green Day, things like that. Clean tunes that kids should enjoy that are not gonna make your eardrums bleed. On July 9th, they add Our Friend, which is an interesting project starring Jason Segel, Casey Affleck, and Dakota Johnson. Apparently this is based on a true story, and in this movie she is diagnosed with terminal cancer, and Jason Segel, as their friend, comes to live with them and help out. It looks like a very touching story. It looks like very good performances from all of them. It's fairly highly rated. I've just never seen it. On July 15th, they add El Cid Season 2. I was not aware of Season 1, but this is based on a famous Spanish knight who is a major war hero during the medieval era. Now this is foreign language, it's a mix. It is in Spanish, Arabic, Hebrew, so everyone's speaking their native tongues more or less on the show. It looks like it's got an amazing production value. If you're into this type of stuff, this show is highly rated. I'm very interested to check it out now. Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day is from 2008. It stars Frances McDormand and Amy Adams. If you're fans of theirs, this looks like it could be right up your alley. If you don't give two shits about either of those two ladies, I don't know that this is going to be a good pick for you. On the 30th, they're adding The Pursuit of Love, which is a new Amazon original series. It's about a couple of young women in the 1920s who are getting older and trying to go out into the world to find love. This has got an amazing cast, really fantastic actors working on this show, and then Emily Mortimer, who I've loved for years, is actually directing the show. However, she does not have any directing credits currently on IMDb, so we will see how this turns out. But the cast, I'll be honest, this does not sound like my cup of tea, but it does sound like it could be a pretty good series if it sounds the least bit interesting to you. But let's also thank the Patreon supporters. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon supporter and supporting this show, there's a link in the description below. There is also a link down there where you can become a channel member and get access to exclusive videos right here on YouTube. But I will keep making these types of videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for watching this special Prime video list, and you will see me on the next one.